Well, good evening and welcome to Patterson Farm Master Plan. I got to turn this on. The Patterson Farm Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting of October 28th. We have a tremendous feedback. Is someone else's microphone on?
Maybe.
Oh, there you go. Volume too high. Well, this is still. Let's try this again. Welcome to the Patterson Farm Master Plan Implement. It is. This mic? Good evening and welcome to the Patterson Farm Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting for October 28th, 2025. We have a full committee participation today. If we could please start and introduce yourselves, please.
Red Childs, Secretary.
Jenifer Stark.
Peter Solor.
Joe Camaratta.
Good evening, it's Ron Schmid.
Thank you. I will officially call the meeting to order. We do have a somewhat busy agenda tonight, despite the kind of the halting progress on our on this project. We were charged to help the township implement or execute the Patterson Farm Master Plan, which was unanimously approved by the Board of Supervisors in December 2023. We have been working diligently with the township to advance that. Progress was made in 24. Progress has been a little halting in 25, but tonight we're going to give a brief update on progress made since our last meeting, which was in August, and then discuss our future directions. The first item on the agenda is approval of the most recent minutes, which I believe were August. Fred, our secretary.
Right, the August 26 meeting minutes were distributed to the committee, and some updates were made to them. Any further updates, any other additions, corrections? So if there's a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, aye. All right, the minutes of August are approved.
I could just mention there was I think from that meeting, there were some attachments. There was a presentation, I believe by AOI, and also a report by Peter that we need to attach to those minutes. So if I could get copies of those items to add to.
Oh, okay. I'll track those down. We'll get the presentation from AOI. And what was the other item?
I believe it was Peter's update on.
Oh, yes.
I did an update comparing it to the original scope and the changes that had occurred. And we had discussed the priorities earlier in the year. I just put out what we had discussed back in, I think it was February or March, regarding the priorities on repairs and the budget, given the changes in
Okay.
what had occurred and what had been found.
Right. Well, if you could just send that report to Fred, he'll see to it gets attached to the August 26 meeting minutes. Thank you. The next agenda item are subcommittee updates. First subcommittee is the Building Protection and Enhancement Subcommittee, which is Fred, Peter, and Jenifer. Any updates to report?
Jim Majewski had sent out a notice saying that the hazardous materials contract, abatement contract, had been issued. I have seen no other emails from Dave or anybody else regarding the Phase 2 environmental studies. And I don't know if anybody has any update on the grant applications that were associated with.
I have a bit of an update. I got a bit of an update today from David Kratzer and Jim Majewski. They were trying to see if the Bucks County Redevelopment Authority could secure monies for the Phase 2 assessment, and within that, perhaps take actions on some of the remediation as part of it. David said to me today that they found out that the Redevelopment Authority did not get the grant that they had hoped for. So it does not look like that option is available to the township to have the Redevelopment Authority pay for that Phase 2 or part of that Phase 2. So they're back to assessing what it would cost for the township to do that solo. And with respect to the remediation beyond the asbestos, which you reported on, some of the containers that were found in an old barn still has not been, the contents have not been assessed. So they still need an expert to hire an expert to assess those contents in order to assess what the remediation may involve.
That would all be part of the Phase 2, would be going into those details. The actual remediation would be after Phase 2 if they're resorting to a more standard protocol. So there would be testing
Okay.
on all those items.
But that had been delayed waiting for the Redevelopment Authority, and apparently that well is a dry well. Is there anything else on building protections enhancement subcommittee? No.
I mean, the conversation that was had the last time, and I don't know who brought it up, but we're treading water. I mean, it's great that we got painting done, but everything else is continuing to deteriorate because it hasn't moved as quickly as anticipated. So, for instance, the Satterthwaite farmhouse, we were anticipating would already be under sublease, and that it would be being worked on to stabilize it by the sublessor, and that's not happened, obviously. So the buildings continue to deteriorate. Somebody else brought that up in the last meeting, but just to reiterate that we're not making ground on stabilizing these buildings with how long this process is taking.
Yes, I think what you're saying is that the condition of the buildings are going backwards, and in some cases, while the painting was a good step forward, not every building was painted, and time is our enemy. for sure. So the lengthy process is working against these structures. We have a comment from the public. Just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, it's Betsovny,
Your
Betsovny, Executive Director of AOI Arts Center and 44-year resident of Lower Makefield. I received an email from Jim Majewski that the contractor is starting asbestos abatement in the pack house on November 10th. You guys aren't aware of that?
Yeah, that email was sent out. There was an email sent out that they did have somebody under contract for the asbestos abatement. There's very little to be done
Yeah.
there's very little to be done in the Janney house. They should be in and out in a couple of
This
hours.
was for
I
the
would
pack
expect.
house.
That's going to be a little bit more involved,
Right,
but
yeah.
yes.
The asbestos tiles, they said were going to be removed.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
Yeah, that's been contracted now.
okay.
Yeah.
Just
It hasn't,
sounded like
the
you didn't
work
think anything
hasn't
was
started,
going
but
on,
it's
so I just
contract.
wanted to chime in. Okay.
Okay, all right. All right, anything more from the structure subcommittee?
Yes, my question would be, since the source of funds for the phase 2 assessment aren't there, can't they use their own funds for that assessment, since that is one of the things that were needed to move forward? Can't they, meaning the township, use their own funds?
I mean, it seems necessary.
We, as of today, round figures, the township has spent about 200,000 of the 700,000 that they budgeted for this project. Between the painting and various miscellaneous things, they've spent about 200,000. So Dave Kratzer today said he expected about 500,000 to be carried over into next year. That's not, that next year's budget isn't official, but that's his expectation. And I'm presuming the phase 2 would have to come out of that 500,000. The next subcommittee report is nonprofit and funding, which is Joe Camaratta, Ron Schmid, and myself. Either one of you want to have any updates on that?
There are no updates on that, sir. We can talk about our meeting with the legislators if you want in this context, but there's no update. There's been no movement at all on creating the 501c3.
I think the last time we left it, we had received a proposed master lease agreement, and to which we responded, but I have not heard back. I have not heard any comments back on our comments or even seen another revision of that lease agreement.
No, nor I. So that's the main item is to lease the property, enter into a lease between the township and a pending nonprofit to manage the property, the structures, and that nonprofit can raise funds to support those activities. But that we've been chasing that lease for all year, and it hasn't. The next version of that lease has not surfaced since, when was the last version we saw? August, July. Okay. Yeah, that's a major setback because that is the foundation of the master plan. Community Communications Subcommittee, Ron?
Sure. What I would talk about here is our meeting with legislators, at both Joe and I. In fact, the Historic Commission, under Joe's leadership, wanted to have a bipartisan briefing of both the Democrats and the Republicans here in the building about the Patterson Farm Implementation Committee. We were invited by Joe and his team to join them. I was not privy to the discussions, but the way it wound up is just the two Democrats, Colin Coyle and Judy Reese, were willing to chat at Colin's house. And just as a follow-up, to be clear, I did follow up their lack of coming to our meeting with a separate note that I sent to both Dave Sabagal, who's the GOP chair, and Brendan Papard, the LMT candidate, inviting them to join us at some point for a briefing, but I have really not heard anything. At the meeting itself, for October, we were at Colin's house. It was a very straightforward meeting. The Historic Commission had some issues. We did too. I talked and Joe talked about the vision of this committee, our objectives, our timeline, and also our frustrations with moving forward with the 501c3. And it was a very healthy, I would say, I would characterize it a very healthy, open discussion. And the results of that discussion were that after the election, that both Colin and Judy would like to visit and walk the farm and also get a further briefing on some of the issues that Joe and I had briefed them on 4 October. Joe?
Right. I think, the only other thing that I would add to that, Ron, is we had a discussion around the master lease agreement. It was probably a less encouraging discussion than I would have hoped it would have been. There was some questions about, forming a new 501c3 and having that 501c3, be able to manage the property going forward. There was the recommendation of, maybe doing a short-term lease of 3 to 4 years. And I didn't say in the meeting as much as I just, I feel that that's not sufficient. I mean, we will never be able to raise any kind of funds if we only have a 3 to 4 year lease on that.
Yeah, to that point, there was sort of a knee-jerk reaction to the 99-year lease, as I recall, Joe. And therefore, Colin at least wanted to look at that. And with regard to the 501c3, the creation of it, I would say he left the door open, but there was some concerns of transferring over responsibility to a 501c3 to pull all this together. I wouldn't say that they were deeply felt concerns that they could be turned around, but, he opened the door to those discussions.
I think from our side, the one thing that we need to do is some education that we're not proposing some far out model that hasn't been tested. I mean, we can go through and look at the number of historic places in the state where the state has turned the property over for management. It is on where the state has turned the property over for management to a nonprofit. In fact, that's how we got the idea. That's how we got, the first versions of what a master lease agreement should concern. We got it from the state of Pennsylvania. So the fact that this model is a well-tested model, and it might be we need to do some education, and we might even be able to reach out to the people from the state that helped us and have them come in and talk about it directly to them.
Yeah. And for the record, there's never been a 99-year lease proposed. The last version of the lease is 29 years. That's what's in the last draft. So if someone's saying 99, that's a hearsay. I've never.
But I would just like to underscore what Joe just said. I had the sense when we were at that meeting that perhaps they had not conceptualized the approach that we had advanced, which is the 501c3. I don't think they really had in mind how to execute this, but that kind of came out of nowhere for them. And to Joe's point, I think we need to demonstrate that, we went to 9 separate 501c3s, and we did it actually at Dan's suggestion. He gave us a lot of those groups, and they all came back, including we went to the state. They all came back with the same recommendations, which is what we forwarded to the township supervisors.
Well, you said that perhaps the Board of Supervisors hasn't conceptualized what this plan,
Those two candidates.
those two candidates, sorry. uh, perhaps part of that is there's been no dialogue, zero dialogue between this committee and the Board of Supervisors directly. It's just a fact. We hold meetings ourselves. We talk to ourselves. We talk to Dave Kratzer. I think he talks to the Board of Supervisors, but there's been no direct dialogue. And that's a perfect model for miscommunication and misunderstanding. Okay. Anything else from the nonprofit? Thank you. The national, I'm sorry, community communications. That's what you were providing. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I said perhaps, I mean, the only thing I would incur, perhaps Dennis, Bet may want to talk about some of the communication she's had with the outside community, both in the open house that we had, and then this past weekend, I think you and others attended a meeting there.
All right.
Which that reached out to a lot of our constituents, those activities.
It did. Bet, or would you like to comment under this community communications on some things AOI have done recently? We're going to take it by topic and not exactly the agenda.
Hi, it's Beth Sobany. Thank you, Ron. We last Friday had a lovely opening of a show, but more importantly, we did an unveiling and a formal welcoming of the Monet, our visiting artist sculpture from the Seward Johnson group, which is, most people know it as Grounds for Sculpture. And Monet points to the future, which is what I said at the opening, and he's painting the barn, and we hope that future happens and fulfills the master plan. And that's basically what I said. It was a packed house, and we were very fortunate. People come out and they support the arts. And what else should I say? I don't know.
Good Facebook postings. Did you get any written publicity other than social media on that?
Or we got the Herald did an article.
Okay, the Herald did an
The
article.
Herald
Good.
did an article, and we had lots of Facebook posts. One of the videos that we posted after the unveiling got over 1,000 hits as of Sunday.
Very good.
So
Very good.
And one other question, Bet, and I think it would lead us perhaps later into part of the discussion we want to have here, but your plans now for fundraising start to develop over the next several months, correct?
yes,
And under the current organization, what would you do with those funds that you would raise?
there are things that have to be done in the Janney House. We do provide scholarships to our regional high schools. We do, we'll work on our educational programming and our outreach to the community. It'd be nice to have funding for that, which we'll be fundraising for. And that's because so far we haven't gotten any response from the township, you guys, or more formally, about being able to fundraise for the eventual Arts Village or for the buildings.
And have you also had people who wanted to rent part of your facility?
We have. When Art on the Farm, we had a big outdoor arts festival in September, and there we sponsored many of the Pennsbury instrumental music program performers. And one of the people came up to myself, and he had done this previously, and also to Dennis about, having a jazz clinic in the Pack House, turning the barn into performing centers. Woodworkers are constantly interested in one of the garages. As soon as the painting promotion got done in the paper, and you put that out there, and it looked all nice from the summer, we got calls. for people to rent studio space.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have to say, attending the unveiling of the Stuart Johnson sculpture last Friday night, it was a very large and enthusiastic crowd, very heterogeneous crowd. It was a great feeling and a great evening. And it just reminded me what the good that could be done at that site for our community on a much bigger scale and more frequent scale. Right now, we're using the Janney House is the only building occupied. And that was just a wonderful evening, and you could tell people enjoyed it and enjoyed the arts and were visiting with each other. If we could do that with more structures on the site, it would just really be an asset to the community. So that's what was going
I
through
also
my
want to
mind.
add that we are looking at collaborating with the Michener as the keepers of the Bucks County Impressionist collection, and going to do some joint programming in the spring with
Okay.
them. So
Nice.
we've got Stuart Johnson and we got the Michener, and we're there.
Okay. Thank you, Bet. Our last subcommittee is the National Registry Subcommittee. Joe Camaratta, who's also on the board of the Lower Makefield Historic Commission. You want to give a report, an update?
Okay, thanks, Dennis. If you recall, the goal was to get a submission prepared by the end of the year, and we're on track to get that done. So what I've been focused on right now is doing the architectural description. So for each of the buildings, you have to go through, you have to do a written prose description of the building. You also have to do photography of the building and then label that photography, put it onto site plan. So all of that work is about 95% done. I'm meeting with Jeff Herco and Donna Doan on Thursday. We're going to walk through, because Jeff, in our last meeting, I guess it was our August meeting, Jeff made a comment about one of the buildings, and we called it something, and he said that was a potato barn. So I reached out to him and said, maybe we can walk the grounds and you could help me understand the historic uses for some of these buildings, because I've been using the names that were actually in the master plan, and I'm not convinced that they're all correct, So Jeff and I are going to do that. Jeff, Don, and I are going to do that this week. I'll update that. One of the things that last year we had the PA SHPO, the State Historical Preservation Office. They came for a visit, and they were the ones who kind of gave us direction on how to do the submission. But when we did that, they offered us the opportunity to submit the materials before we officially submit the materials, and they would review and give us feedback. So my goal is, by the time we have our next meeting, to have already done that. So that'll be the architectural description, the photography, the what they call Section 8, which is the statement of historical significance, and probably the boundary justification. I'll submit all of that to them and look forward to getting feedback. And once we get feedback, we'll be able to then finalize the submission.
That's fantastic that you have that relationship, that you can kind of do an early submission, an informal submission, if you will, to get that kind of refinement and feedback. That's terrific. Thank you.
I hope so. I will ask them if they're ready, if the offer still stands for us to do that.
Very good. Very good. The other agenda item we have for this evening is the committee's future directions. And this is a discussion for all that I think we need to have as we approach the end of 2025. 2024, there was certainly progress made in terms of planning and kind of getting down to some of the more nitty-gritty of the implementation. 25 was to be the year of action, and admittedly, it's not been impressive. So what I put down some thoughts that I've shared with the committee. Let me just read those into the minutes, and then it'll be an open discussion. The goals of the Patterson Farm Master Plan are clear. It's to preserve, restore, and activate this historic and agricultural property for the benefit of our community. Doing so not only protects an irreplaceable part of our township's heritage, but also enhances the value and the utility of this Lower Makefield-owned asset. The charge of this committee is straightforward: to assist the township in initiating the implementation of the plan until stewardship can be transferred to a dedicated nonprofit, which is a model that's been recommended by every expert that we've interacted with. In essence, our role is to help the township increase the value of this community asset and finally resolve the long-standing, quote, problems of Patterson Farm. It's haunted this township for a long time. A long-term lease to an aligned nonprofit committed to executing the plan remains the cornerstone of this implementation. Unfortunately, progress towards these goals in 2025 has been slow and discouraging. To any objective observer, the Board of Supervisors' actions or lack thereof in 25 raise legitimate doubts about the commitment to the plan unanimously approved in the fourth quarter of 23. If the township is unwilling or unable to move forward with the preservation and utilization of the property, this committee simply cannot fulfill its purpose. This reality warrants serious discussion tonight about whether continuation of our work is still justified. That said, it is possible that with upcoming changes to the board in 2026 may bring renewed focus and willingness to act. That's unknown. For that reason, while I personally believe that our mission here has largely run its course under current conditions, it may be prudent for the committee to continue for a short time longer to see whether the new board recommits to executing the plan and preserving this vital community resource. So that's kind of a summary statement at this point in time. The foundational element of the plan execution has not progressed or seems to be in doubt. So if there is a question about executing the plan, then this committee doesn't have really a mission anymore. So with that, I ask the committee to offer your thoughts, suggestions, reflections, agreements, disagreements, etc. Who wants to lead us off? And it should be an interactive discussion for sure.
Well, I'm the newest member of this committee by far, I think, but the assumptions that went into the development of the master plan did assume a certain time period, and the longer that process gets stretched out, the harder it is to accomplish many of the objectives that are listed in there. And while we might have discovered new items, some things certainly have progressed along that we can control directly. I think the historic application is an excellent example of that, but we can't proceed without support, and we are going to lose ground on the physical infrastructure out there if the process doesn't start speeding up. Then what little has been gained on the physical stabilization we're going to lose, which is, I think, back to what the original concern with the property was that a lot of the buildings were falling into disrepair.
So you're saying it's the hill is getting steeper with these delays, and the implicit assumption of the plan was that action, if adopted action, would be taken, and if we're not taking that action, certain assumptions may no longer be valid. Is that correct?
That's my read of the plan, but since all of you were involved in writing it,
Fair.
I mean, I think we can look back and certainly the township under Dave's leadership has moved forward with some initial steps, but I don't want that to fool us that, that really constitutes significant progress towards the end. I think I come back to something, Dennis, that you had said kind of at the very beginning of this process at the ad hoc committee. You said an empty building is a dead building. I'm paraphrasing, but the whole point was that we can't find the use and we can't put these buildings to use, then no matter if we paint them, no matter if we abate the asbestos, all of this stuff is for naught because they will continue to deteriorate. And I think when I take that in mind, the one thing that needs to move forward is the master plan recommendation of having a nonprofit take responsibility for making sure that those buildings get, restored and put to use so that they're live buildings and not dead buildings. If that doesn't happen, all the other stuff is just really kind of lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, I think we've come to a lot of meetings, and a lot of the meetings keep going back to the same place, which is we keep asking for creation of the 501c3 to move this forward. And the longer it waits, the less we can do any fundraising. The more people who want to rent AOI's facilities sit on the sidelines. The more whatever bet raises doesn't go anywhere to support this. So it's been going on a little too long without, I think, an appropriate answer as to how to move forward, and things have continued to deteriorate. And for that reason, I think that we should give serious consideration to perhaps taking a break and then coming back later on if it's appropriate with a new charge and a new direction, but with some very clear guidelines as to how to proceed.
Other thoughts?
Well, most of the members of the board have been here through the whole process from the initial ad hoc property committee, with a couple exceptions, but and I'm grateful for the commitment that started us out through Supervisor Blundy, who really spearheaded getting the ad hoc property committee started and was one of the initial liaisons and helped push this forward and kept it going to the point where we developed the master plan. And up until this year, with the current chair, things just ground to a halt. I mean, up to the last year, the whole board approved the funding and the master plan itself, understanding what the purpose was and what the plan was. And then all of a sudden, under this current leadership, it just dragged on and just got pushed aside. Maybe there were other priorities. Certainly there were important issues to be dealt with, but it's obvious that there's been no direct leadership to this point to get it the nonprofit and the lease agreement pursued and completed. And by next week we'll know who the two new board members will be, and I'm not all that convinced at this point whether that's good or bad. So we'll need to find out. But the board approved the money, that we have the funds, they knew what the master plan was, and right now it's just in limbo, And I agree that if, until this board decides whether or not um, they're committed to this program, then I think, there's really nothing at this point that we can do. You've certainly been on their case all year about it, Dennis. And I think we heard from when we had the forums and other public comment through the years. Certainly this community wanted to see something happen over there, and certainly didn't want to see development, which is happening at other properties. And I think the community will not be happy to see it continue to waste away and have the funds that were committed to this not be used. So.
Well, as you all know, we serve at the pleasure of the supervisors on this committee. So my thinking is we could take a deliberate pause with the understanding that we remain committed to our charge, but we look to leadership to tell us when they're ready to pick up the same cause, and we'll work with them in collaboration. So my recommendation would be to take a pause and wait for new leadership to give us the directive and their commitment that they will support as we work with them to provide the steps to carry out the master plan directives.
So we've heard a couple suggestions to take a pause. Jenifer, I like the way you said it, that we're speaking for myself, and I presume for others, tell me otherwise. We're willing and able to pick up this cause when invited to do so again, under the right environment to commit. A lot has been said about timing. Peter started with the fact that the plan was developed with some implicit timeline in mind. Certainly, in the first couple years, this committee should be disbanded because it's no longer needed, because it's now being managed by a nonprofit. We don't even have, a lease for that nonprofit. Once a lease is signed, that is not when the work begins on these buildings. Once the lease is signed, the nonprofit has to go to work, and is going to take time to get a capital campaign, to get an executive director, to raise the capital necessary to really have an impact on these buildings. Now, it's been 2 years. That timeline scares me. I think this nonprofit could take action quickly. We had in 2024, we had soft circled easily $400,000 from donations if there was a nonprofit in place to take them. That has gone fallow because of the lack of action. So I for one support a motion that we cause a pause with the understanding we're willing and able to pick this gauntlet up again if and when the township asks us to, because they're committed to begin to execute the master plan. We've used the word implementation, but it's really execution. There's a pretty good quote I just saw. The vision must be followed by the venture. It is not enough to stare up the steps. We must step up the steps. And that's what it's about. We have to take tangible steps forward. And that hasn't happened. So I would support a motion that we, in an agricultural term, go fallow for a while until the township's ready to plant some seeds and invite us back. Other thoughts, or I mean,
Can I maybe
dispute that,
maybe
push
make a
back?
counter to that? I agree with what you said, Dennis, that when the lease agreement's in place, that's, you know, it really falls onto the nonprofit then to get out and do the fundraising. But I think there's still a really important preparation work that needs to be done, which is to prepare the farm so that it can have volunteers and people on the farm. And I know, you know, we're making slow progress on that, right? I mean, we did the phase one, you know, the phase one study, and, you know, we're doing the asbestos abatement now. And then we're trying to get phase two. My concern is that if we pause, that work stops, because I think that work has went forward with the help of the township, with Dave and Jim's help, right? But also because of this group, and Peter, your efforts to push that forward. And my concern is if we just pause, then everything will pause. And then when we come back, we won't be any closer to being able to, what needs to be is to be able to bring volunteers onto that farm to get some of those, where we can, to get some of those at least smaller buildings stabilized and ready for occupancy.
I agree that that is a fear. And while there has been admittedly some advancement in the environmental assessments and cleanup now, I'm sorry, it's insultingly slow. We've been talking about trying to get a phase two and trying to do a $21,000 asbestos cleanup for 6 months. We cannot move at that pace. That is the governmental pace that has led every other similar property to say we can't manage it with a municipal government. We have to turn it over to a nonprofit. So when I say that the township has to be ready to act with some vigor, act with some urgency, because, you know, we might get a bid out in the next 4, 5, 6 months. That it's not good enough. Just to be candid, this is why it shouldn't be run by a municipal government, and every expert told us that. So let's do these couple things that need to be done with some urgency on the environmental cleanup, so the nonprofit, if the township is willing to turn it over to be to the stewardship of a nonprofit, can begin its work. So I agree with you, but even if we pause or not, that has been painstakingly slow. And I think insultingly slow to the structures. The structures are insulted by this speed. Should we make a motion or keep, what?
I'll just, in response to Joe's comment, which I think, you know, gave me pause. The problem could be that if we take a pause, it's easy for the board to decide, okay, we'll just let it go and not recall us to continue the work. I think Joe's point is valid, that, you know, with this group continuing to make contact with David and Jim and others, at least there's some impetus on their part to keep things moving, at least from the township staff point of view, regardless. So I think that is a valid concern, and maybe we ought to pause in that case. But I would want to see maybe a more strongly worded indication to the board that this is where we're at, and in the next 2 months, while this current chair has the gavel, so to speak, unless we see some indication of commitment, further commitment and movement on these issues, then by next year, this committee can disband because it's not accomplishing anything.
Well, I think I have to argue the opposite and go for the pause. And the reason is that I hear you about the need for volunteers, but AOI can work to get their volunteers on the AOI side. We really haven't heard much from Donna Doan and the people who are going to run the Satterthwaite farm, so I don't know where they are with volunteers. And I think the greater good is that we were created to save the buildings. Not to save all the volunteers, to save the buildings.
But the volunteers help to save the buildings.
Yes, but she can do that.
I don't think that she could do that outside of the Jenny Brown house.
But so our charge then for the next several months, as we continue to bang our heads up against the wall with the Board of Supervisors to create the 501c3, will be to get volunteers out there?
No. My point was that what we had said was it was important to have volunteer labor. See, all of the pricing that was done in the master plan was done based on prevailing wages, and it's very expensive, and it's, as Peter pointed out, it's even more expensive now, right? And what we wanted to be able to do is, where appropriate, we understand where appropriate, be able to bring volunteer labor in to do some of that. And this is an ongoing point. I mean, Patterson Farm Preservation has offered to come on and do it before, but it's always been stated we can't have volunteers go on and work on the buildings because of environmental conditions. And it's a truism. I'm not saying it's an excuse. Actually, we had the lead paint issue, right? We have the asbestos issue. So we always realized that was important with that first stage of money, was that those issues get resolved so that the nonprofit could actually not just raise funds, but raise hands, if you would, to come on and help do some of the work. And again, my concern or my point is that if that just stops, then even when the nonprofit's formed, we still have, months before we can raise money or raise people.
I see Fred's point that they very well could just forget about it until there's a big issue 2 years down the road when, say, the shed behind the Satterthwaite farmhouse falls down. And then people get upset again locally, and then there's push, but then everything's in a worse place, and all this effort has to start mostly over again because it got shelved. So maybe Fred has a point that we should continue to meet. And there is work to be done. It's just agonizingly slow, though. And there's going to be there's going to be a substantial amount of work that can't be done by volunteers. Now, I understand that the Patterson Farm Preservation was, for instance, going to deal with the lead paint issue at Satterthwaite, is my understanding. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't deal with the paint there, because why do the paint and then have them go in there and start doing wood repairs when they're going to be qualified to do the work anyways? But there are things like the roofs that you're going to need to subcontract out anyways, and they need to happen sometime soon. You have these other grants that we were submitted on, which I know weren't discussed this time. I'm presuming that those can continue to be applied for. I know it's frustrating, but I'm not going to be around here, but I know it's frustrating, but it probably makes sense to continue to meet. It's just going to be abbreviated and frustrating. Or maybe you do it once every other month.
Right.
Well,
just so it's regularly occurring and that it's getting brought up.
No, and I appreciate the fact that if we're not kind of nudging the township along, these things would go even slower. But we were formed to help the township implement the plan, not to incentivize the township or nudge the township or prod the township to implement the plan. We were here to help it, to facilitate, to move it along. But if our role is motivation, we're very bad at that. We've been very bad at that. We can meet every month and put minutes together that nobody reads, but I don't know how motivating that is. If the township is not motivated to implement this plan, that to me is the ultimate kind of variable. And if they're willing to trash the plan and let the buildings fall down, why do environmental cleanup? That money could be wasted. If we're just prodding them along to spend a couple $100,000 to clean up and then there's nothing going to be done anyway, that's wasted money. So I could see it both ways. I agree that we can nudge the township along, but that really isn't our role, and it's really not. It's not that effective. Our role is to help them prioritize, to identify, to put the pieces in place so that they can turn it over to another entity. And every behavior I've seen this year suggests that they are unwilling to turn it over to another entity. They won't give us a draft. It takes 9 months to get a draft. It takes, months and months to get a response to the draft. We get, little snippets of information here or there about what's right or not right, but there's no dialogue. I've never seen an agreement negotiated without dialogue. There's none. There's zero. Who's met officially with the Board of Supervisors? When's the last time we did? We talked to David. He's a conduit, but it's always defaulted to them. So
I think
that's kind of where I am.
but the important word, I think, 2 words that you said there was this year. Like when we sat here at the end of 2024, we did not feel this way. We did not feel discouraged. We did not feel ignored. We did not feel, abused, right? We actually were optimistic.
Right.
And I think I'll come back to the point that Fred made and say, there's going to be changes coming in January. And hopefully those changes will bring in a renewed vigor for this and commitment to this. And if they do, then I think things could move forward faster. So I guess I would maybe, I don't disagree with what Jenifer said, but I would think that if we can somehow keep it going even every other month till March, you have to give them some time, right? But I think by March, we would have a clear picture to say things are moving forward now, or it's the same as 2025, and we should just shut it down until people are ready to talk about it.
So we do have something that we can continue to work on, and that's the NR nomination.
Mhm.
That would continue, and that's great. I think it would be wonderful to ask the supervisors for a resolution that states what they're willing to commit to, so that the new Board of Supervisors can sit down in January, and in February, they could tell us, this is what we'd like to have happen, and this is what we're willing to support. I mean, it's obvious when you talk to candidates who are not familiar with anything that we're doing, it means that it's not a topic that's considered relevant for a campaign speech or future investment in what the population is talking about. So that means that this is very back burner. So until we find out when this becomes the forefront, we don't really have much support.
Right. You can't help someone who doesn't want help. Jenifer makes a great point about the submission to the National Registry. I think that is important, and I would not want to see any kind of pause there. Maybe what would make sense is that this committee pause its public meetings and simply with individual assignments, like National Registry or environmental cleanup, we dialogue with David and Jim or whoever we need to. And then in January, we ask for a meeting between the committee and the Board of Supervisors, public or executive, private, I don't care, where the committee can express its plans and its thoughts and its concerns and give the supervisors an opportunity to discuss, reflect, and give us direction. I mean, they may well say, yeah, all things considered, we want to abandon ship, or no, all things considered, we want to see this move forward and we're committed again. But I think we can, as individuals, keep some initiatives going and stay in dialogue with the township. I mean, we don't have a dialogue with the Board of Supervisors now. We've never had a board liaison communication or participation in any meeting. So we can suspend our meetings and ask for a meeting with the supervisors sometime in January with the new board seated. What do you think of that? I'm open.
That, but maybe also plan on having a meeting of this board in January, because theoretically there'll be an assigned liaison at that point. Maybe we'll have a sense, we can communicate with them. If they don't show up, that's another indicator that things are not going to go well. That they don't show up to the first meeting.
Okay.
But yes, I don't think there's going
So
to be nothing warranting us having a meeting between now and January.
So we can,
Unless you get a miracle and you get a revised agreement.
All right, I'll be the hard nosed here. I don't want to see the National Registry go down the pooper, nor do I want to see volunteers not be used. On the other hand, I do think we need to send a very clear message, because we keep going around this issue every meeting we have. And I think having a pause until the new board takes over, we meet in January and we see if they reconstitute us and give us a clear charge after having met with us. The metric to me is, what are they going to ask us to do? What's going to be in that charge that they pass that says this is how you should go forward? But I think we need to send a clear message, and I think we should pause. We're not disbanding the committee.
Right.
We're
It's not
pausing
our
our
authority
meetings.
to.
I think the Steadman manifesto should be shared with the supervisors, so everybody knows where we're coming from. We've never taken it to that next step, which is to really put a flag in the ground and say, hey, nothing's happened here, guys.
Okay.
So my summary is at least 3 parts. One,
This is pretty good.
suspend public meetings,
For November and December.
November and December.
And schedule one for January.
Scheduled for
The next
January.
public meeting will be January. Okay.
Continue the individual dialogue and ongoing projects, the National Register interface with the township on the hazard materials and so on. Schedule a meeting with the new board and or some complement of which, and the new liaison, whoever that may be, in January, separately from our public meeting. Or or as part of it.
And I think the last part of it, Fred, and see if the committee agrees, we need a very clear direction on the future of where we're going. What's on the table here, and has been on the table, is the creation of the 501c3. I mean, if we're willing to die on our sword on that, then I think that's got to be part of the negotiating process. That's if they're not going to create a 501c3 and they tell us that in January, then there's no reason to meet. There's no reason for this committee to exist. Correct?
I think the meeting in January is necessary so that we can make a presentation
Yes.
here and
Fine.
with them.
All I'm asking for is I want a clear indication from them as to what they will move forward with. That's what I would like to see.
Well, to refine, I think what Ron said just a little bit, it's not only creating a 501c3, it's being willing to entering into a non-restrictive lease agreement with a 501c3. Because the lease agreement that we've last seen will have the same, speed and slow halting pace that we've been experiencing all year, because it seems like everything the 501c3 is to take action on needs Board of Supervisors approval, which is oxymoronic to the whole rationale for turning it over to an entity other than the township. So I think if our next meeting is in January, there's a new board liaison, we meet with that board liaison and deliver those messages and have the board liaison and/or us take that to the full Board of Supervisors to ask for the kinds of commitments and guidance, direction that we've discussed that we need. What do we think?
Yeah, and I think the timeline would be, we'd be looking for direction by February.
Yes, I think that's fair. Yeah,
I think that we need to meet with the board, whoever
I-
we is at the time, but more than just the liaison, because
I-
the communication will seem
Right.
less important if it's just the liaison.
I-
Well,
I-
it'd be good to have them engaged.
No, I agree with that, but I also want to respect the liaison structure and the new liaison, him or herself, to start there. I think that's fair, but ultimately it has to be a dialogue between the committee and the full board. I agree. But at least stop at the first base is with the liaison at least. And then take it. Fred, do you think you got that?
So
I'm about to ask a question here. Would it be appropriate to do a motion to have Dennis's presentation here submitted to the Board of Supervisors as a memorandum in conjunction with the fact that this board is going to pause and not have meetings in November and December, with a meeting in January and an expectation that we'll be able to present this board's charge for discussion to the Board of Supervisors in January for some sort of wording on,
For hopefully greater commitment and guidance in one direction or another by February.
I think a motion and submitting this makes sense. I don't know if that's appropriate with the way this committee is structured, but I think that makes sense.
second the motion.
I'm in.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
You're going to have to do a little bit of writing to clean that up, Fred.
Yeah,
Well,
Dennis's
memorandum was just a couple of add-on items.
Yeah.
We're pausing our meetings. We
yeah.
expect a meeting in
Give
January.
me a draft of that part, and we'll work on that together and get it into a presentable package. Thank you.
It could be argued that we have fulfilled our charter. I was just looking at the resolution which formed the committee, right? And it basically says talks about the committee membership, but it says the committee's mandate is to take steps to recommend all necessary measures to implement phase 1 of the master plan. And in doing so, consider the various relevant environmental studies completed, and then it also says the committee will also consider options for nonprofit entities for management of Patterson Farm and make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors accordingly, which we have done.
Right.
So one of the approaches that we could take is that we have fulfilled that. If they're interested, if the Board of Supervisors is interested in having us continue, it would be this. Otherwise, we fulfilled our duty to the town and we can disband.
We've made all the recommendations that you asked for.
I think that would be part of those January discussions.
exactly.
Because there wouldn't be a point in doing that now.
Right. But that's how we could approach as we go into 2026, that we could say, this is what the resolution said. We fulfilled that part of the resolution. If we're going to stay as a committee, then it needs to be updated. And if no resolution gets passed, we don't have a committee.
Right. Yeah.
And did we resolve how we were going to handle the National Registry submission and volunteer activity? That would still be, even though we're not meeting, we are still committed to making those things happen.
I will finish that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've committed to
Right.
Historical Commission. I've committed to Dave.
I guess what I'm asking is, do you need this structure to, no, okay, fine.
Yeah, this committee has recommended that submission go in. Joe, as part of this committee and as Historic Commission, has worked on that. And, we're kind of see it as part of our mission, but it still can't go in until the Board of Supervisors approves it.
That's it. I mean, first of all, it is a recommendation in the master plan, so we're fulfilling that. But in fact, I made a note, I'm meeting with Dave later this week, but that was my question to him, is what I can prepare this, but I can't submit it without approval. So what's the approval process?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other, are we done with that topic? Or was our discussion complete with that motion and vote? Thank you. The next agenda item is any other business. I can't imagine.
Just one quick.
Okay.
I did mention it before, but I think it's appropriate to appreciate that Supervisor Blundy and Supervisor McCarthy will be finishing their term in December, and especially Supervisor Blundy, who was very instrumental in initiating the ad hoc property committee and was our liaison and actually attended our meetings and also provided support back to the board. So I'd just like to express appreciation for their efforts and support for the committee.
Here, here. Supervisor
Yes.
Lundy has been a real asset and colleague in this whole pursuit. And we thank her. All right. Next is any public comment? Okay. All right. Fred, I think we just did kind of a review and assignments, didn't we? Do you have some highlights you want to point out at this juncture?
No, just another reminder that I need the presentation
Attachments.
and the report for the minutes.
Okay.
And our previously scheduled November and December meetings will be canceled.
Right. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meetings adjourned. Thank you. I really value the dialogue. This is important.